Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For connectors, cables, and more, call 920-435-2973 or visit pl-259.com.
Here's the snap. Rapp takes the rig. He breaks through the pileup. He's on 80, now 40, now 20, 15, 10, 2 meters. Touchdown, Ham Talk Live.
It's Ham Radio with N0AX. Here we go. Welcome to Ham Talk Live. Call in, let's talk. Neil's your guy. Ham Talk Live. Here we go on Ham Talk Radio.
And a good evening to everyone. It's time for another Ham Talk Live. It's episode number 87, the new 2018 ARRL Handbook with editor Ward Silver, N0AX, recorded live on Thursday, October 26th, 2017. I'm your host, N0AX, WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight we're joined by Ward Silver, N0AX. And we'll take your calls live in just a few minutes. Last week on the show, Sean Kutzko, KX9X, was here, and he was talking about getting started with satellite. So if you missed that show, you can catch it over at our website, hamtalklive.com, or on any of the podcast outlets like Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeart Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, SoundCloud, or even over on YouTube. You can find us there, so make sure you check that out. And get your handbook questions ready to go. We're going to talk to Ward here about that. The number you can call whenever we're ready for that, I'll let you know, but I'll go ahead and give you the number. It's 812-NET-HAM-1. That's 812-638-4261. Or you can Skype us. Our username is Ham Talk Live. You can also send a question via Twitter. We're on there, and our handle is at Ham Talk Live there. So we'd love to hear from you tonight and take your questions. So chime in by Twitter or Skype or by telephone, and we'll talk to Ward for a few minutes here, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll turn it over to the questions. So again, that number is 812-638-4261 when we get ready for that. Couple of odds and ends here to take care of. Gary over at Ham Radio Now was just telling me he was planning on doing a show before ours, and due to some mix-ups in the time zones, they're going to start here in a little bit, so you can catch that on the replay. That's over at Ham Radio Now. They're going to be talking about Puerto Rico and talking to a couple of people who were on that trip to do some disaster communications down there. So that'll be coming up in a little bit live on Facebook, but the replay will be on there as well, so that you don't miss either one. And also, good luck to everyone this weekend at CQ Worldwide this weekend. And as we say on the show here, may the good DX be yours. So hopefully we'll hear you on the air, and plan on getting in on part of it. We've got to do some things this weekend, but hopefully Sunday can get in on some of that. So be sure you catch us here every Thursday night on Ham Talk Live at 9 p.m. Eastern Time at hamtalklive.com. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll have some more stuff up there here after the show. Well, Ward Silver, N0AX, was first licensed at age 16 in 1972, and earned a degree in electrical engineering at the University of Missouri-Rolla, which is now the Missouri University of Science and Technology. Ward spent time in broadcast engineering and field and product development engineering for many years. And he's an avid contester, DXer. He's on the DXCC honor roll, the top 10 in several contests and record lists, and one of the founders of the World Radio Sport Team Championships. He's currently the president of the Yasme Foundation, which he's been on the show talking about that before. And he's pursued technical writing, and he's been the lead editor of the ARRL Handbook and Antenna Book for a while. He's authored many others, such as some of the study guides, Ham Radio for Dummies, a recent one on grounding, and many articles. He was the 2008 Dayton Amateur of the Year, and in 2015 inducted into the CQ Contest Hall of Fame. And he enjoys his music, especially with the world-famous Spurious Emissions Band each year at Dayton. So, Ward, thanks for coming back on the show.
Oh, thank you, Neil. Glad to be here. And yeah, that's I'm going to have to edit that introduction down. It's about time to go. How about that?
Yeah, well, I actually cut it from last time, so yeah, wow. And by the way, anytime we mention a certain brand of radio on this program now, we have a little clip of one of the Spurious Emissions Band songs.
Oh,
so anytime somebody is, one of those, like some of those TV shows, whenever you say the word, the sirens go off and everything, So anytime somebody says Baofeng, we play a little clip of the Baofeng song. So
there you go. Yeah, Neil, that was a big hit, and thank you for the idea last year. Yeah.
Now we'll see how this other idea pans out. I'm still trying. I want to get the whole song this time. I don't know.
There you go. Well, everybody
we'll
wants
see.
to play. Have fun.
Well, tonight we're going to talk about the new ARRL Handbook that just came out here recently. And wanted to mention something I saw on Twitter today. Kay Craigie, the past president of ARRL, N0AX, tweeted out when she saw that you were going to be on tonight with this. She said, "Any technical concept Ward can't explain clearly probably made no sense to begin with. And experts, newbies alike benefit from his work." So one of the things that we want to talk about tonight is your work in trying to explain complicated things and technical things.
Well, Kay's very kind, and I appreciate the endorsement. 15 years of doing hands-on radio and trying to fit complicated ideas into a 2-page format is quite a challenge. And I understand Mark Twain's remark about, "I'm sorry I wrote you such a long letter. I didn't have time to write you a short one." But yeah, it's really true. And she's very kind. I've really appreciated the feedback from the readers over the years, and the handbook is really something that I enjoy putting together. I really have to acknowledge the work of all the people that put their shoulder to the wheel and contribute so much to the handbook, because some of it I do write, but not very much compared to all the articles and updates and reviews and everything else that come in. I think the contributor list was in dozens this year in a major revision like this.
Well, we're going to put that theory to the test here. So we've got a little piece here that we want to play, and we're going to have you explain everything. So here we go. This is test number 1.
Here at Rockwell Automation's world headquarters, research has been proceeding to develop a line of automation products that establishes new standards for quality, technological leadership, and operating excellence. With customer success as our primary focus, work has been proceeding on the crudely conceived idea of an instrument that would not only provide inverse reactive current for use in unilateral phase detractors, but would also be capable of automatically synchronizing cardinal gram meters. Such an instrument, comprised of Dodge gears and bearings, Reliant electric motors, Allen Bradley controls, and all monitored by Rockwell software, is Rockwell Automation's retro encabulator. Now, basically, the only new principle involved is that instead of power being generated by the relative motion of conductors and fluxes, it's produced by the modial interaction of magnetoreluctance and capacitive diractance. The original machine had a base plate of prefamulated amulite surmounted by a malleable logarithmic casing in such a way that the two spurving bearings were in a direct line with a panometric fam. The lineup consisted simply of 6 hydrocoptic Marsal vanes, so fitted to the ambifacient lunar wane shaft that side fumbling was effectively prevented. The main winding was of the normal Lotus O deltoid type placed in panendermic semi-boloid slots of the stator. Every 7th conductor being connected by a non-reversible Tremi pipe to the differential girdle spring on the up end of the gram meters. Moreover, whenever fluorescent score motion is required, it may also be employed in conjunction with a drawn reciprocation dingle arm to reduce sinusoidal depleneration. The retroencabulator has now reached a high level of development, and it's being successfully used in the operation of Milford trunnions. It's available soon wherever Rockwell Automation products are sold.
All right, so there you go. So explain to us how the retroencabulator works.
Well, you see, the dingle arm and the cross product with the divergence of the gradient of the Thellman wire is really important. You know, if you haven't got that under control, why you could have a hyperprompt disassembly.
There you go. Yeah. Sinusoidal depleneration. That's just a bad thing.
Yeah, Gesundheit. Yeah.
Yes. We've had some fun with that, and I just tweeted out the YouTube address if you want to watch the video of that, because the guy is the latest one anyway. The guy actually was doing it as a demo tape, so to prove that he could sell anything on TV, and so he's got the whole set and moves his hands and everything like that actually works.
Man, I'll tell you, the guy's a master.
Yeah, he did a good job with it. So if you want to watch that, that's Retroencabulator on YouTube. And as I said, I tweeted the link to that out a while ago. If you want to watch that after the show, it's pretty funny. Well, let's talk about some serious stuff. The 95th edition of the handbook, hot off the press. So tell us about what a reader would find in the handbook.
Well, retroencabulators are not in there. The handbook gets a big facelift every once in a while. My first attempt at this was in 2010 when we took it apart and reorganized it, and then again in 2014. And the 2018 edition is another one of these major reworks. So I think the biggest change to a long-term reader of the handbook is that you'll find the chapters that used to be receivers and transmitters and transceivers and that sort of thing are now more about functions, receiving, transmitting, and that sort of thing. Everything in ham radio, in terms of the equipment, is starting to change with SDR and DSP techniques and stuff. So instead of trying to tell people how to build a specific device, basically we talk about the functions and then how they would be done in an analog way, the old superhet, and then how they would be done digitally through software-defined radio techniques. So this is sort of a transition. I think in 5 years, 4 or 5 years, you may not be able to buy a new radio that's fully analog, except for maybe some niche type transceivers. But so it was important to move the handbook in that direction. Another big plus is Ken Norton, Norris's KK9N has brand new update of the remote control section in the building a station chapter, and that's quite a cool thing. We're also starting to include more microwave material, notably Paul Wade, W1GHZ, has contributed a bunch of new material, and so there is a lot of new stuff. We're trying to hang on to the basics that are not changing, but we're trying to update the handbook to reflect the current state and trends of technology.
I think that's a really good assessment of where we are with things right now, because the digital trend, even VHF and UHF, and now HF is right there, and so we're in that transition right now of moving from one to another, and there's a lot of both going on, and SDRs are just catching on like wildfire, and I've been lucky enough to play with the SDR in a box at school, the ICOM 7300, and just fell in love with it. And I think you're going to see more of that.
Well, we're just starting. SDR is not only taking over the existing radio, but it's going to enable entirely new ways of looking at the radio spectrum. And that is going to change the way the radio looks, the way we operate, the way we think about operating, the way we think about radio. And you'll still have radio waves going from point A to point B, but the equipment on each end is going to start looking quite a bit different. The current radio is still a box with some numbers on it and a big knob in the middle. And that's pretty much been the standard for radios since the 1930s. And SDR is going to enable big changes. So it's important to know what's under the hood. We don't all have to become hotshot DSP coders, but it's important to know the basic functions and the basic elements so that you can use and understand what it is that your radio is doing. So the handbook is not a design manual for SDR, but it's a how to use SDR and how SDR works document.
Very good. Well, you mentioned it's the first big revision in a while. It was actually 2014. So what are some of the additions that are in the book this time?
Well, how long you got? Well, we touched every chapter except the chapter on telemetry and navigational data, and that is in work with the two primary authors to come in a future edition. So everything is going to be touched. Chapters 2, 3, and 4 that used to be the electronic fundamentals, and then analog basics and digital basics, all that's been reorganized now. And you've got a fundamentals chapter, and then a circuits and components chapter, and that kind of thing. So that's, and the digital basics chapter is now a downloadable PDF. There's a big radio math article that's downloadable and a radio math cheat sheet to help you out. Then we talk about toroidal cores, noise materials, all been updated. There's a really nice new section on electromagnetic simulator software by the founder of Sonnet Software, Jim Ratio, AJ3K. If you read Hands on Radio, the November column mentions Jim's online article about Maxwell's equations. He's a very knowledgeable guy. Started out with Apple IIe programs, and now he's got a big company that does electromagnetic simulations. And you keep going. We've got a new chapter on DSP and SDR fundamentals by Doug Grant, K1DG. The oscillators chapter has new material. There's a lot of new filter stuff. We've got. I'll get into the projects in a minute. Just jumping through all this, not to dwell on SDR too much, but N5AC, Steve Hicks, who's VP of Engineering at Flex, wrote a lot on SDR signal chains and user interfaces. We have some stuff on GNU radio, GNU radio, FPGA tools, and all sorts of stuff. So then you get into the FreeDV protocols. That's all new. Some discussion of the palette amplifier modules, the new System Fusion and DMR. I guess protocols are really their systems. Propagation chapters updated. We've got new treatment on waveguides, a bunch of new antenna projects. Even added some connectors, connector material. And, it just goes on. Vector impedance analyzers, time domain reflectometry discussions, amplifier repair section got updated, all sorts of things. So, hey, there's some grounding and bonding stuff in there. How about that?
Oh, hey, some grounding stuff from you?
Yeah. The satellite stuff got updated. The EME stuff got updated. The digital and ATV stuff got updated too. So we touched an awful lot of it. And just some of the new projects. There's a bunch of new VHUHF and microwave filters from Paul, W1GHZ. There's a couple of nice pre-selectors for your SDR if you start playing around with the little dongle. RTL SDR, for example, those don't have very good front-end rejection of strong signals, and you need a pre-selector. So got a couple of those, some new audio interfaces, Arduino and Pickaxe stuff, a couple of new antennas, and we have a spud gun antenna launcher article.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so there's also something with that element of danger, fire, and imminent death. There you go.
Oh, my. Well, I remember, back in the day, I picked up a copy of the handbook from my college bookstore. It was on clearance. It was the previous year's edition, and got it real cheap, and I thought, well, I'll pick this up, and come to find out they were using it as a textbook for the broadcast electronics course. And there's just all kinds of stuff in there, and so much information just packed into one big book. And it's changed over the years, and you mentioned all these recent changes, but this thing can serve a lot of different people. It can serve as a textbook for this class, as well as just for the say casual ham that wants to launch an antenna.
There's a lot of professionals out there that keep a copy on hand as well, because it's got a lot of day-to-day stuff in it, and so they'll buy a copy. It's only, $50 now, and if you go in and price college textbooks or any kind of professional material, you're into 3 digits. So I would tell my students, even if you're not really interested in ham radio, this is a great book full of reference material, basic theory, projects, tables of interesting stuff and things about feed lines and transistors, and you can't beat the bang for the buck. You really can't. And I'm just delighted that we're working hard on trying to make it a real practical, useful thing. And even if you don't read it, it'll hold stuff down because it's real heavy.
Well, that brings us to the next question. So let's talk about how people can get a hold of a copy and what different formats are available for that. And then we're going to take a break here in a minute and take some calls. So tell us about how you would get a copy of the handbook.
Well, ARRL.org/store. Go to the ARRL store. That's the best place. It's available from Ham Radio Outlet and DX Engineering and all of the ham radio vendors. Just go down to your local ham fest, and there's a book vendor there. They should have a copy. So they're all over the place. One note, this year we dropped the CD-ROM. All the material that comes out as a supplement is downloadable. So you get a code with each book, and then you can download a CD's worth of material and put it on your hard drive. So a lot of good stuff in there too. But, online at your local electronics dealer, as they say.
Okay, very good. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and give you a chance to call in and ask some questions about the handbook and other things from Ward right after this from Tower Electronics right here on Ham Talk Live. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you in part by Tower Electronics. Tower Electronics has been the ham's dime store since 1978. When you need connectors, mobile and handheld antennas, cables, or adapters, visit Scott or Jill at a hamfest near you. Or you can order online at pl-259.com or call 920-435-2973. Stock up on those supplies like PL259 and N connectors, SMA adapters, audio cables, soldering supplies, mobile antennas, and ham sticks. Their silver-plated N connectors are even used on the International Space Station. Tower Electronics carries MFJ, Comet, Daiwa, OPEC, Workman, and Ham Pro products. And don't miss their 0% off sale going on now. Tower Electronics online at pl-259.com. Proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
Copy 594 from Ham Talk Live.
Join the conversation. Call us on voice with Skype at Ham Talk Live or give us a call at 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Now, here's more Ham Talk Live.
Back. Thanks to Scott and Jill at Tower Electronics for sponsoring the show. Help bring you Ham Talk Live each week. And coming up, they're going to be in LaGrange, Georgia on October 28th and November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. They'll be in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And I know they're planning on a trip here to Indiana, to Fort Wayne later on in November. So if you can't find them at one of those ham fests, give them a call at 920-435-2973 or visit their website at pl-259.com. Tell them I sent you, and they'll give you that 0% off sale that's still going on now. Well, it's time for your calls. If you have a question for Ward, give us a call. It's 812-NET-HAM1. Now is the time to call. It's 812-638-4261. Now, if you're not up for calling, you can tweet us. We're at Ham Talk Live, and you can also Skype us at Ham Talk Live if you'd like. But let's hear from you and hear about some of those questions out there. And actually, I did have one, and I may have to pull this up here. I did have a question that came in earlier this week. It was about, I don't see it at the moment. It was about some, I can't remember what it was, radio or something that was drawing power even while it was turned off, and they didn't understand why it would draw power while it was turned off. So you want to try that one?
Well, sure. That's typical of a lot of electronics these days. You turn the power off, really all you've really done is turn off the display, and maybe in a radio you turn off power to the amplifier section and whatnot. But what's going on inside is it's still live. It may be waiting for some kind of a signal, or perhaps if a signal comes in and it's above a certain level, the radio will wake up. Usually that's a configurable item inside the menus. There's sort of a standby setting. And if you turn that off, you can make it really turn off. But usually that's so the radio can wake up on some kind of an event.
Okay, and I found the exact question here too. It's from Gail Harris, and says her ICOM 706 Mark II-G has phantom power. Her solar system gets drained when it's hooked up, but not turned on. Yeah.
Yep. Go in and see if there's a configuration item to kill whatever it is that's sucking down the juice. And phantom power is a name also used to power electret microphones. So if you plug in a microphone, like ICOMs have power on a certain pin of the output connector, and that's for powering an electret mic, and it's called phantom power. And as long as I'm on that subject,
48
there's
volts.
a big new section. What's that?
48 volts. And if it's turned on and you accidentally plug in your phone into a mixer that has phantom power turned on because somebody didn't know and turned it on, and you walk in and just plug it in and not realize it, it does quite a number on your headphone jack, I've heard.
Yep. You got to be careful about mixing different types of gear. Pro Audio has its way of doing business, and that's not always the same as how hams do it. There is a big new section on the microphones by Jim Brown, K9YC, and a big section on how to properly set up your microphone levels. Plus, Jim Ton, W4 Echo November Echo ENE, contributed some updated compressor and other circuits for speech amps and that sort of thing. The circuits in there had been out there a long time, and there's better technology in there. So we're trying to get to the how to actually operate your equipment part of things in the handbook.
Very good. 812-638-4261 is the phone number if you have a question. Or you can tweet us like she did at Ham Talk Live and ask whatever you want to. We'll give it a try. And Ward, why don't while we're waiting to see if we have any of those questions come in, why don't you talk a little bit about the history of the handbook? It's been 95 editions, so talk about a little bit of the history behind it.
The very first edition was in 1926, and it was a little book. It was about the thickness of a couple QSTs, 2.5 QSTs, in the old format, the old smaller format. And as the saying goes, it's grown a bit, and it pretty much had everything you needed to know to hook up the typical ham station of the day, which everybody was using the same stuff. And that was, I can't remember when they finally got rid of Spark for sure, but everybody was using the same type of radio equipment in those days. And so the handbook could focus on that. And then later, the antenna book came out in 1939. So for 13 years, the handbook was it. After World War II, well, actually, there's an interesting little sidebar here. There was a defense edition, 1942, after Pearl Harbor, and there's a few copies of those floating around out there. They printed a special edition of the handbook for amateurs engaged in homeland defense and the military. And then they kept putting out handbooks, and then World War II ended, and everybody came home, and ham radio took off again, and so there were lots of handbook editions every year. So 1926 was 91 years ago. There's been a couple of different editions. Sometimes they came out at the same time. They were not all the same, like there was the defense edition, that sort of stuff. So this is the 95th edition. We got 5 years to go for the centennial. There was a supplementary book in the 1960s and 70s called Understanding Ham Radio and Understanding Amateur Radio. And it was sort of the gateway to the handbook. You know, we laugh about the retro encabulator, but when you're just getting started out in ham radio, a lot of the more advanced projects and things that you're not familiar with do have that retro encabulator flavor about them. And so I remember reading as a kid, I'd read a copy of the handbook and hit something that totally bamboozled me. And then I could go back to this Understanding Ham Radio book. And then I go, oh, I kind of get it. And then I go back to the handbook and read it. A lot of us learned electronics out of the handbook that way. So it's a long tradition of both teaching and instruction and guidelines for practical use. And the handbook is always been approached with the idea that the first rung of the ladder is low enough for a motivated amateur to reach, like a general class licensee or a somewhat experienced technician. And the first rung has to be low enough that somebody who wants to get there can do it. It's not an engineering textbook. It's for ham radio operators, and we recognize that not all of us are engineers and technical experts, and so that information is valuable to everybody. Hope that wasn't too long, but that's basically good. That's how the handbook has come together over the years, and it's a great honor for me to be the editor of this book, and not only that, the antenna book and the license manuals. So it's about 3,000 pages of material, and I'm very proud to be responsible for it.
Very good. Well, we've got another question here. I think we kind of got this answered already since he typed it in, but Carl KD9HQT says he has the handbook from 1993 that was owned by his grandfather, N0AX, and covers most of the theories and covering components and designing antennas and such. Even though some of that's outdated, would some of that information from before 93 and forward be reused and revised to meet current information standards in this new book?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Laws of physics haven't changed very much since 1993, so the fundamentals of electronics are still valid. You'll find some antenna bits and transmission line bits that are verbatim from earlier editions, and that's an important part of the handbook. Is some things are not changing, and so we need to be consistent in the way that we present them and treat them. And it's kind of fun to keep some of this old stuff alive. For example, in the antenna book, there's a couple of pen and ink drawings that were in the very first edition back in 1939, and as long as I'm the editor, we're going to keep them in there.
Oh, that's cool. Well, as they say on Star Trek and also Dr. Demento, You cannot change the laws of physics, Jim.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. And I thank Carl for his question. It's good to keep some of these old books around and, find your the notes or the signature of somebody from long ago and far away. I have a handbook from the year I was born and a handbook from the year I was licensed. And, some guys try to collect them all. I'm not sure my house could stand the weight there, but, the handbook is a real piece of ham radio tradition, even as it changes every year. So that's important, and I thank the caller for the question.
All right. Well, just checked. I think we've got all those covered, and we've got 2 minutes left. So with these last 2 minutes, why don't you touch a little bit more on that new remote control section of the handbook?
Yes, very good. Remote control is a big deal. Many hams are using stations by remote control. There's more every week, and you can do that with very simple setup, or you can make it as complex as you want. But the internet connecting us to our radios is enabling people who couldn't get on the air because of living conditions or restrictions or whatever. They set up a remote station someplace, or they share a remote station with somebody else. Anyway, there's a brand new section on how to do that. Ken, KK9N, wrote it. It updates from Rick, K6VVA stuff before. It's really good material. It's not exactly cookbook because every station is different. But if you're contemplating remote station control, this is a good chunk of the handbook that you'll find really useful. Ken is very knowledgeable about networking things, and he lays it out very clearly what you need to do and how you can do it. And the manufacturers are making their equipment more network friendly every year. So this is a big new area of ham radio, and I think the readers will appreciate it.
Now, the one section that I need for that is how do you get your IT administrator to allow that through the firewall at a school? Is that a specific enough question?
Yes. And I wonder why you're asking that, Joe. Yeah, Ken should give you enough information that at least you can ask the right questions. You may still get to know, but at least you can sound intelligent while you're getting there.
There you go. Yeah, I'm still fighting that battle. We've got it all set up and ready to go, and works great inside the network. But
well, if you're planning on doing a demo of ham radio, you're going out to a shopping mall or a fair or something like that, I suggest people consider using a remote station. The portable setups are always a compromise, and you often spend time in trying to explain to people why you can't talk to anybody. It's noisy, low antennas and stuff like that. Why not use a remote station and have a nice big monitor there so they can see what's going on, and use full-size antennas in a good location and really show them what ham radio is about. And most people will think that's just fine. Have some radio gear to show them, but say, hey, we're connected to a station someplace, and how about that? We're talking to Europe or South America or California or whatever.
Yeah, that's some great stuff. And Troy, W9KVR, just chimed in and says, yeah, that's a great question, because he has the same issue. So,
Yep.
These school networks. All right, well, we're out of time, Ward, but thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, everybody, and glad to have you invite me back. Thank you, Neil.
All right. Well, that's a wrap for this week's Ham Talk Live. Thanks to Ward, N0AX, and everybody out there for tweeting in. And next week, Don Greenbaum, N1DG, will be here to talk about the KH1 Baker Island DXpedition. And you can see all of our upcoming guests at hamtalklive.com. This is Neil, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and may the good DX be yours.